Have you ever looked back on a moment that seemed hilarious at the time, only to realize it quietly changed the direction of your life? I'm Jake Carter, and this is the story of how one careless prank taught me a lesson I never expected to learn. Just a year ago, I was your typical 20-year-old college student. My weekends revolved around soccer, my weekdays were filled with classes and hanging out with friends, and I loved making people laugh. I enjoyed being the loudest voice in the room and rarely missed an opportunity to turn an ordinary situation into a joke. People around campus definitely knew who I was. Some enjoyed my company, others simply tolerated my constant antics, and a handful preferred to stay as far away from me as possible. Looking back now, I can't really blame them. The biggest problem was that I treated everything like entertainment. I was so focused on getting a laugh that I almost never stopped to think about whether someone else would end up paying the price. Eventually, that attitude came back to haunt me. The person who changed everything was Maya Reynolds. Maya had built a reputation across campus that was impossible to ignore. She consistently earned top grades, organized successful student events, and carried herself with a level of confidence that demanded respect. It seemed like whatever she decided to do, she excelled at it. Our relationship quickly became one of constant competition. Whenever I managed to outperform her in class, she'd reclaim the top spot the next time. If I won a debate, she'd return the following week with arguments that left everyone speechless. Before long, our classmates began treating our rivalry like its own campus tradition. Most people assumed we couldn't stand each other. The truth wasn't that simple. Neither of us hated the other, we simply refused to lose. Everything changed during an end-of-semester party. The house was overflowing with students. Music echoed through every room, conversations blended together, and everyone was determined to forget about exams for a night. Somewhere in the middle of that chaos, I made what I believed was a harmless joke. To me, it lasted only a few seconds. To Maya, it became a public humiliation. A few days later, she approached me after class. What caught me off guard wasn't anger, it was her composure. She spoke calmly, smiled politely, and invited me to join a weekend project she and several other students were organizing. I accepted without giving it much thought. That was my biggest mistake. The project was introduced as a month-long social experiment designed to help participants understand lives and perspectives completely different from their own. Each person would temporarily step into a role unlike anything they had ever experienced, with the goal of building empathy rather than seeking comfort. It sounded harmless enough. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that Maya had another reason for inviting me. Part of me believed this was simply her way of settling the score. I couldn't have been more wrong. As the 30-day challenge unfolded, my skepticism slowly disappeared. What I expected to be an awkward punishment evolved into something far more meaningful. Each day forced me to confront assumptions I had never questioned. Every conversation revealed perspectives I had ignored for years. Situations I once laughed at suddenly felt very different when I experienced them myself. By the end of the challenge, I realized the biggest change hadn't happened in my surroundings. It had happened within me. The experience transformed the way I viewed other people, my own behavior, and the consequences of actions I once dismissed as just jokes. It became one of the most valuable lessons of my life, and it all began with a single careless decision that I thought everyone would eventually forget. The guy who once believed he had life completely figured out slowly discovered how little he truly understood. By the end of those 30 days, I was no longer the same person who had walked into that challenge with a smirk and endless confidence. If someone had told me where that journey would eventually take me, I would have laughed without hesitation. I would have dismissed it as impossible, called it ridiculous, and walked away. Yet life has a strange way of proving you wrong. One day at a time, one lesson after another, everything I believed about myself began to change. This isn't only a story about two rivals trying to outdo each other. It's about what happens when every belief you've built your identity around is challenged until nothing familiar remains. Only then do you discover who you really are. And believe me, the road there was far more unexpected than I ever imagined. The truth is, I never hated Maya. In fact, I admired her more than I was willing to admit. She had long dark hair, vivid green eyes, and the kind of confidence that made people naturally pay attention whenever she entered a room. She didn't have to demand respect, it followed her effortlessly. Students admired her, professors trusted her, and almost everyone wanted to be around her. If Maya ruled the campus social scene, I was convinced I ruled it right beside her. That assumption turned out to be my biggest mistake. Everything unraveled because of one childish prank. During a crowded party, I secretly mixed temporary pink hair dye into a bottle of conditioner, knowing there was a good chance Maya would use it later that night. I convinced myself it wasn't a big deal. The color would disappear after a few washes. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. What I failed to remember was what came next. The very next morning, Maya was scheduled to give an important presentation in front of professors, classmates, and several recruiters visiting campus. Instead of being remembered for her work, she became the center of everyone's jokes. People stared. Some laughed. Others whispered. She finished the presentation with pink-tinted hair, and she never forgot who caused it. Now I stood inside her bedroom, frozen. Carefully arranged across the bed was everything waiting for me: a dress, a carefully styled wig, makeup, jewelry, and several accessories. Nothing about it looked random. It looked planned. Maya leaned casually against the wall while her three friends, Ava, Sophie, and Riley, watched me with expressions that hovered somewhere between amusement and satisfaction. Trying to hide my nerves, I forced out a weak chuckle. "So, what's the joke?" Maya smiled. "There isn't one." Ava casually raised her phone. The instant I recognized it, my stomach tightened. A video. Only fragments of the previous weekend came back to me. I'd had far too much to drink at another party, and most of the night was a blur. Apparently, someone else's memory had been much better than mine. Whatever that recording contained, judging by their confidence, it was enough to destroy me socially. Maya folded her arms. "You've got two options." I swallowed hard. "What options?" She nodded toward the phone. "First, this video gets shared." "Shared with who?" "Everyone." She said the word calmly. "Our classmates. Your teammates. Professors. Even your family." The room suddenly felt much smaller. "And the second option?" A slow smile spread across Sophie's face. "You cooperate." My heartbeat sped up. "Cooperate, how?" "For 1 week," Sophie answered, "you take part in our little experiment." Without thinking, my eyes drifted back toward the outfit on the bed. "No chance." Maya simply shrugged. "Then we press send." Just like that, every escape route disappeared. Maybe I should explain who I was before all this happened. My name is Jake Carter. 20 years old. Athletic. Outgoing. Confident, probably too confident. I had friends almost everywhere on campus, decent grades, and enough popularity that I rarely questioned myself. Looking back, confidence wasn't really the problem. Arrogance was. I loved making people laugh. Unfortunately, I often forgot that every joke has a target. More often than not, Maya became mine. Not because I disliked her. Because I assumed she could handle it. I was completely wrong. Silence filled the room. After what felt like forever, Maya glanced at an imaginary watch. "Time's running out." Ava lifted her phone again without saying a word. The message couldn't have been clearer. Choose. Part of me wanted to snatch the phone. Part of me wanted to argue. Another part desperately hoped this entire situation was some elaborate prank. But deep down, I already knew better. They had planned every detail far more carefully than I had planned mine. Maya tilted her head. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." Heat rushed into my face. I hated everything about this moment. But I hated the thought of that video becoming public even more. My reputation. My friendships. Everything I'd spent years building could disappear overnight. With a slow exhale, I reached toward the clothes. No one looked surprised. If anything, they looked relieved that I'd finally accepted reality. The instant my fingers touched the fabric, my stomach twisted. Surely this couldn't actually be happening. Yet no one laughed. No one admitted it was all fake. They simply watched. Every second stretched endlessly until one fact became impossible to ignore. The prank I'd started for entertainment had grown into something far beyond my control. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't the one calling the shots. I rubbed the back of my neck and sighed. "This is unbelievable." Maya gave me a calm look. "You agreed to the challenge." She wasn't wrong. Over the previous weeks, every task had forced me further outside my comfort zone. What I first saw as revenge slowly became something completely different. Reluctantly, I sat down and adjusted my shoes, still unfamiliar with wearing anything besides my usual sneakers. The others exchanged knowing smiles. "This should be interesting," Ava laughed. A few moments later, Maya returned carrying a long brunette wig. "Almost finished," she said. Before I could protest, she carefully positioned it. The transformation happened instantly. The face staring back from the mirror felt strangely unfamiliar. Then came the makeup. I complained. They ignored me. For nearly 30 minutes, brushes moved across my face while they debated colors, blended makeup, and adjusted tiny details with surprising patience. Finally, Maya stepped aside. I looked up. For several seconds, I couldn't recognize the reflection. Someone else seemed to be standing there. Confident. Composed. Elegant. Completely unlike the version of myself I had known for years. Nobody spoke. Then Ava finally broke the silence. "Honestly, that's impressive." Sophie nodded in agreement. "I didn't expect it to look that convincing." I sighed dramatically. "I don't know whether that's a compliment." The room burst into laughter. Maya smiled. "Ready for the next stage?" I narrowed my eyes. "What next stage?" Her grin answered before she did. A wave of panic washed over me. "Oh, you've got to be kidding." She laughed. "Not even close." A couple of hours later, I sat nervously in the backseat of Maya's car. Our destination? A college party. Normally, I'd have been excited. Instead, I wanted to disappear. Ava glanced back. "You look terrified." "I am terrified." That only made everyone laugh harder. Soon we pulled into a neighborhood packed with students. Music echoed from every direction while groups gathered outside under glowing porch lights. The moment I stepped out of the car, I seriously considered turning around. Maya noticed immediately. "Too late." I groaned. Inside, the house buzzed with conversation, dancing, and loud music. At first, nobody paid much attention to us. Eventually, a few people looked our way. Every glance felt enormous. I could feel my confidence slipping away. Maya leaned closer. "Breathe. Easy for you to say. You'll be fine." I wasn't convinced. But as the evening unfolded, something unexpected happened. No one mocked me. No one pointed or whispered. People introduced themselves, chatted casually, and treated me exactly as they treated everyone else. Little by little, the fear disappeared. Instead of trying to dominate every conversation, I simply listened. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to become the center of attention. Surprisingly, it felt freeing. Later that night, after the music had quieted and most guests had gone home, we sat together on the backyard patio beneath the cool evening sky. Maya turned toward me. "So?" I thought carefully before answering. I'd expected embarrassment. Instead, I'd found kindness. I'd expected ridicule. Instead, I'd found ordinary conversations. Finally, I smiled. It wasn't anything like I imagined. The others exchanged satisfied smiles. Maya laughed softly. "I knew you'd figure that out." On the drive home, I stared silently through the window. When everything began, I believed this challenge existed to humiliate me. Now I understood something different. It had never really been about revenge. It was about seeing the world through someone else's eyes. It was about understanding people before judging them. And, more than anything else, it was about becoming someone better than the person I used to be.